Tingid here with Cheers and Bits saying, I am a big proponent of not putting underqualified people into positions purely based on appearance of equality. In my opinion, it should be solely based on who's most qualified no matter what gender, race or background, etc., says Tingid. And dude, thank you for the Cheers and Bits. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. But I think all the things that I've said before, I think it's always important when you make a statement like that to show that you understand the other side of the coin as well, because I've seen people say what you just said like less eloquently, and it can kind of sound a bit mean sometimes when it's not. It's really not. It's a very good point, and often the point is brought up about like firefighters, right? Do you want the person who's going to put out the fire in your house, to be the best person for the job, or to represent a group of people? Did I see a ghast head with that? So yeah, again, like then when you say it like that, it might sound like you're not providing a solution, you're not providing an answer. But the solution, the answer should be to make it so that those root problems don't create that bigger problem that we're trying to fix. That everyone has access to becoming a firefighter or to obtaining a certain skill set. And there are so many things that disadvantage communities and societies from being able to obtain those sorts of things just by, what neighborhood were you brought into. We can all imagine like, right, you want to become president of the country, okay? You're born into some, like low-income neighborhoods with crime problems, or you're born into a family in the wealthiest part of the country with a huge estate. Who's going to have the better chance? What access are those? Is that newly born child going to have to things in their life? That's where it manifests. The lottery of birth. Most jobs, positions, etc. can be done with training. Some people are disadvantaged by access to training/education. The argument that hiring the best person to the job is the most important doesn't promote equality if access to training, education is still unequal. See, I agree with everything you're saying. Everything you're saying there. But to me, the answer isn't let's get those people into that job. It's like you said, the education part. That's the bit to focus on, is to make sure everyone has equal access to education. And that is like one of the great places we could start, is just by making more robust education systems and social care systems, and giving people more and more opportunity for a better chance at these things, DMK with Cheers and Bits saying, my counter question would be, do you think having the opportunity to see people like you represented in communities like Minecraft might be a part of the opportunity to succeed? Let me read that again. Do you think that having the opportunity to see people like me represented in communities like Minecraft might be a part of the opportunity to succeed? I don't know that it is. I mean, I'm not sure I fully understood your question, but I'll say this. I don't feel like in life like I've had too many disadvantages based on something I didn't choose, right? Like being male, being white, I see how there are obstacles for other people that I don't encounter. I've had my own obstacles, everyone does, but I've never felt like they've come from that thing that I didn't choose when I was born, right? Sometimes they might have come out of misfortune or wrong place, wrong time. But I see that. So as for me, I don't ever go around feeling like I need representation somewhere. And I don't know if that's just because I'm not bothered, or is it just because I see my same subset of like people everywhere, like white males. But then again, I don't feel particularly akin to being a white male. Like it's not a flag I wave, for example. So I really don't know how I feel about that. It's weird because it's like trying to put yourself... Like I can put myself in the other person's shoes, but what I can't do is see that problem on my own spectrum or perspective even. Your representation is everywhere, says Alpengrap. Yeah. So what's great about thinking about it that way, I guess, is that it makes you really think through what it would be like to live in society and just feel like you're never represented anywhere. I totally get that. But it's sort of like a don't know, it's like a logic. There's a logic to it, like it's a negative reason. Because at the same time, I'm also feeling like, as a person, if I was of color, different gender, orientation, I might also just not care that I'm not represented anywhere, right? And that's because me as a person, I'm kind of like I'm not very like, I don't really care that much what other people think about me. And that might be a bit weird to say as someone who makes videos, does streams, and people are like constantly sort of telling you what they think about you. Maybe that is a part of it, but at the end of the day, I feel like I know who I am and who my people are and like what's important to me. And like I will be the person to reflect on myself, and and like I don't need anyone else to tell me. I guess people that are close to you, you value what they say to you and you listen to them. I'm not I'm never seeking some external validation from anywhere, so I don't know that I would. Like, it's really weird. And I actually know someone who is trans and sort of generally doesn't care like about what anyone else thinks about it or the movement or any of that. Like, they know who they are and they're like at peace with it, because I think there is capacity for the people to feel apathetic to it as well, right? It's a very, very interesting question, that. I really appreciate that question. That got me thinking big time. We've got Guthers here, which is a bit saying, what about subconscious bias thought? X as part of the systematic issues in a Western culture. Not saying you're wrong, just playing devil's advocate. Guthers, playing devil's advocate is great. I do it all the time. Like, if I'm listening to something and I have some sort of reaction and I'm like, oh yeah, I agree with that, I quite often just pivot to, but what if I didn't agree with it? Like, I think it's really good to try and see things from multiple perspectives. So, on the part about subconscious bias, I was reading something on Reddit. It's in an unpopular opinion, and I quite like reading unpopular opinion because you can find some interesting stuff in there. And this one person was saying that, like, they were touching on racism and how that word gets used and thrown around, and it's kind of like a deep topic to dive into. And so I won't go into it too deep, but their essential point was that on some level, everyone has an element of racism in them because we are all biased and we will be biased to other people's skin color. And I thought about that and I thought, yeah, that's right. That really is right, because here's me, Mr. Ignorance. I go around reading these books about how the brain works and how you have these natural biases, ways you interpretate things. Stuff like you can show someone a video of them clapping their hands together and you can offset the sound so that it is in front or behind the clap, yet the person watching that video can't tell the difference. And it's because your brain synchronizes and times the data. Like the way it feeds it to your conscious experience, it actually is constantly plugging bits of information together. And we experience this in various different ways. Like, have you ever like walked and looked at something in the distance and you know what it is, but then you get a bit closer and you have that sort of like brain melt moment where you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's something else. I thought that was a person. It's a post box, and that is like your brain like feeding your conscious experience information, and you can get it wrong. And so bias is kind of tied into everything. Like we tend to think that we are having a pure and true experience, but really it's like a put together experience in the mind, and biases and shortcomings appear all over the place, and learning about them makes you like see things a little different then. And so it's a really good point. You can't help but have some sort of different reaction because the element is different. Now, I think when we use the word racism, we often associate it with hate, people being mean, and the bias that I'm talking about doesn't mean hateful. It doesn't mean that you've got something hateful in you, but you just will naturally have a different reaction. People of different hair color, height, they will make you think different things. If you're in a relatively, let's say, dodgy situation, you've been out at a party or whatever, you're making your way home, it's late, you're in a strange city, and you get approached in the dark by a couple of strange men, right? Imagine they're tall, right? You're probably going to feel more frightened than if they were short. And these are just biases. Like, you don't actually know who these people are, what they're going to say or do, but your brain has these like defensive instincts. And so there is bias at every level all the time. I just think like to be educated and to understand that exists within yourself gives you the tools to realize when it's like not acceptable, or it kind of oversteps some boundary, right?